Is on.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Ted, welcome, and welcome to the call. I'm looking forward to hearing from you about your idea. Why protest Congress and run for Congress instead? Um, One of our previous speakers, Gabriel Ostuni, suggested the same thing about 8, 10 months ago, maybe along with taking a bunch of other actions as well. Getting involved and putting the leadership on notice. So, Ted, over to you. We want to learn about the actions you're taking, and hopefully that will inspire more people to take similar actions.
Yes, thank you, Salman. And I did not know about that previous presentation. I joined this group about 6 or 7 months ago, soon after I started the LinkedIn public group Worldwide Palestine Solidarity. It has now, the name has been updated to Worldwide Humanitarian Solidarity. And I think that's consistent with a lot of people's feelings, including the Palestinians, that Gaza and historic Palestine is a compass for all of humanity as far as, how we deal with each other and how we look to a healthier and more sustainable future. That group, to my astonishment, surprise, and blessing, has been growing by about 1,000 people per month since March of 2025. Over the last month, the people who have been joining has been plateauing. It's only growing by about 200 a month this last month, and that's okay. And that's maybe a good time for me to introduce this topic to all the people that are in that LinkedIn network. And as Salman introduced, my concept is why protest Congress, run for Congress instead. My clear understanding, my clear impression from 14, 15 years of being a humanitarian activist is that um, the members of Congress or high profile individuals, they have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in their network. And it's hard for any single individual's message to break through unless you already have that contact with that individual. My own personal experience has been that letter writing has been unsatisfactory. It's too easy for the letter to be um, arrive at the wrong person, for it not to be understood, for the particulars of your correspondence to be glossed over. Of course, that doesn't mean that there are and there have been some letter writing campaigns that have been very successful, or other forms of protest that have been very successful. And certainly, all the progress that the worldwide community that is empathizing and supporting Palestinians has made a lot of progress, has made a lot of noise, has made a lot of points to break through the consciousness of humanity. And I think we all witnessed that, at the UN meeting of this week, where most, if not all, the world leaders were commenting on it. I note that in my country, the United States of America, in the last presidential election, it the topic of Gaza was not discussed at all. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about this campaign of mine. I decided to run for Congress myself in Cape Love, North Carolina, in in June of 2025, and I just felt that the time was right for me, and my accumulated activism on the topic needed some additional, just get to the next level. And I felt in my head, in my heart, and in my gut that Congress needed to be put on notice. And it's very simple to determine whether a individual who's elected to national office, how, where they stand on these issues. You just need to look at their voting record. And individuals, members of the House of Representatives that are voting to use U.S. taxpayer funds and send them to a country that's committing genocide is unacceptable. Members of the House of Representatives in the United States that are voting to send weapons to a country that's any country that's committing genocide or war crimes is unacceptable. These laws are on the books. They're on the books in the United States of America. They're on the books throughout the world. And it all traces back to the results from the Great Patriotic War, the Second World War, that was, that concluded 80 years ago. And our grandparents, great grandparents, gave us an incredible gift, which was these laws to clearly delineate what is absolutely unacceptable. So I'll transition at this point to show you some of the material that I put together. But the reason for me making this presentation to this group, for it to be recorded and hopefully shared by members of this group, is that others can take that same initiative. Now, this may not be for every single person. Maybe there'll be dozens or hundreds or conceivably thousands of people around the country or around the world that might capture the same concept and run for office in their country of birth or their country of choice, where they're currently residing and where they're a citizen. So over these last 3 months, I've fleshed out what I have done and what I am comfortable with and what I can offer as suggestions to others. So I will share my screen at this point and go to actually my LinkedIn account. So here is my LinkedIn account. I'm assuming that everything is coming through okay. I am a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. I served for 4 years at the Air Force Academy and 20 years as a commissioned officer and retired honorably. I further continued service to my country as a defense contractor for short periods. And so for a total of about 3 decades, I was working in the field of acquisition, defense acquisition, and 2 of those decades was in the field of foreign military sales. Fortunately, I can say I was never involved in activities that had to do with war crimes or genocide. Nevertheless, I was always aware and well trained by the U.S. government in avoiding committing crimes through my work. I mentioned that I'm a candidate for Congress, and a very important point that I want to point out here is no donations are sought nor accepted. This is not a money-making scheme on my part. This is what it is. It's a way to make Congress aware of their role, because what I found is that most Congress members are taking the bribes, the legal bribes from the lobbyists, and they believe that there's no consequences. There are consequences, and we'll get into this. So I've had close to 1,000 posts in this group, in this worldwide humanitarian solidarity group, and only about 10, 15, or 20 have been on this topic. But again, this is the focus and the effort that I want to highlight with this meeting. So I have this post, and it's included in my featured posts right here in my LinkedIn profile. And it starts with a clip from the film Spartacus. I believe this is a 1960 film starring Kirk Douglas. It's a very moving film for me and for others, especially this scene. And the reason I bring this up is so that the viewer of the video or the participants in this meeting can have access to it. But also under this post, I have 6 of the, let's say, campaign flyers or campaign slogans that I've used over the last few months. And I'll go through these, let's say, in chronological order. So this was the original campaign flyer that I put out, and this is as far as I went and as aggressive as I was in identifying what the problem was and what I would like for my fellow citizens, fellow humans, people in Washington to realize. It's not well advertised, educated to the public by either our government or the media, but there are laws in the books prohibiting war crimes and genocide. And really, one of my thoughts when I originally put together this campaign flyer was what's here at the bottom. Just educate the public in what's going on. I identify myself at the top. I identify that I'm running for Congress in 2026. So now as we're in the middle, beginning of spring 2025, it's not too early to start thinking in these terms. Now, as I said, this is the most aggressive that I've been in any of my campaign flyers. And it has stood the test of time. No one has said that I couldn't use this campaign flyer. No one has said that there's anything, let's say, illegal or incorrect about it. But being as aggressive and seeking the death sentence for a congressman, which is in accordance with the law. If you read the law says war crimes that result in death are punishable by death. And this is what I want to, include as a point of reference or education for, especially for the people in Washington. However, it turns off a lot of people. We're in a state where we're doing a lot of protesting, and the activism, taking action, is just starting to bubble to the surface. There's a lot of people that have been doing a lot of action, but I think more of the people that have been doing protests are going to start doing are going to start taking action in various ways. And this is only one of dozens, hundreds, or thousands of actions that can be taken. So from that first flyer, which I had, and I'm trying to load, I moved on to a second flyer. It's taking a little bit of time to load here sometimes. And so I'll describe it. It's unfortunate.
Maybe just try hitting refresh.
Yeah, let's.
It's a provocative flyer, but I remember you mentioned that like your goal is to not get the seat in Congress, but put Congress on notice. You are being realistic about you're not actually gonna get a seat in the Congress, right? And but at least this way, you will get some significant attention.
Well, I'm running, and I'm running with integrity. So
right.
If elected, I would definitely serve. But the environment is not ideal for someone like myself. I'm a person with a lot of ideas, but not necessarily a huge amount of charisma. Charisma is a gift of the divine. And so I recognize this. I recognize that I might individually get 1% of the vote. But rather than putting all my effort in getting from 0.5% of the vote to 1% of the vote, why not put my effort into inviting 50, 100, 500 people into running and and having the position as candidates for national office in the United States or in other parts of the world. If you're in a European country, you might want to run for the national legislator in your country. And that has different implications depending on what country that you're on. So I will again try to load another one of the campaign flyers that I have. Uh, Hopefully the gremlins will be a little bit friendlier. Yeah, so here it is, and I'll attempt to share it. So this is actually a follow-on to the other campaign flyer that I put together, and I actually did this while I was traveling, and I did this in direct response to a few people, but very conscientious and respectful people who objected to the the harsh and aggressive stance that I took in my initial campaign flyer. And in this one, we're including at the bottom, we've only changed it to seek the maximum penalty. And in addition to Title 10 U.S. Code Section, Title 18 U.S. Code Section 2441 War Crimes, I've included Section 1091 Genocide. And also, I looked up and included Title 10 U.S. Code Section 918, Article 118 Murder. And the reason that I included that one is I was doing some research, and I researched the My Lai massacre from the Vietnam War. And I found out how the officer that was in charge and led that massacre, how he was held accountable. And the way he was held accountable was under UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 118, premeditated murder. And it may be a stretch to put the premeditated murder onto, let's say, people, a wide swath of people in Washington, but the criminality is just off the charts. And there's, a washing of hands and a avoidance of responsibility widespread among those who are our national representatives, who are, in our name, taking actions that are reprehensible to the majority of the population. There are other postings, and I'll briefly point to those that I place in my featured section of my LinkedIn profile. And I will also say that I'm most likely a write-in candidate. Whereas if there was an individual with a higher profile and more of a following locally, they might be able to run as an independent, get drafted by one or the other of the political parties where they exist. What I would like to stress and to emphasize is this is a way to ensure that Gaza is a topic in any upcoming election. That's in my country and worldwide. I think I mentioned that I did not hear it discussed in the last presidential election in the United States of America. It just wasn't discussed. And that's a shame for our country. It's a shame that we're going to have to live with. But we can make a difference. And whether you're a person with just a few contacts or you have a wide range of contacts, and you're willing to take this additional step, it's a way to force the issue. And for myself, I'm not necessarily campaigning in a traditional way where I have 20 different websites and 20 different social media accounts. But my approach has been when there's an event, especially an event between candidates, I might not be invited to participate in the stage, but I might be outside the venue when the people are filtering in and giving them my flyers, physically handing them my flyers to make them understand that this is a topic that they can address in the meeting, that there are candidates and there are conscientious people who see a different trajectory for our country, for our world. Um, Here, I'll take this opportunity to share. Let's see. Um, so again, I'll leave it to the individuals to look at these posts individually. This is a post or a flyer that I put out about 3 weeks ago, I think, and or maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was the concept, the birthing of the concept that anyone and everyone can take the time to look at their representative's voting record. And that's how you can tell whether or not they're complicit in what's happening in Gaza and Palestine, or if they're let's say not getting themselves implicated in this mess, and that their position should be respected. So it's the majority of the Congress that has been voting in this manner, and not necessarily the entire Congress. Um, so you have to be careful. And I can also say for those representatives that are voting in a conscientious manner, um, they should be supported. Or candidates that are running on maybe multiple issues, but they've got the Gaza question right, they can be supported. And here is, let's see, well, this one was from 4 days ago when I announced that I was going to be the featured speaker of this presentation, of this week's presentation. And I've also added another, these are conceptual, concept flyers. I see a huge connection between lack of accountability in Washington on all a wide range of topics, not only Gaza. Of course, Gaza is the most egregious, the most desiring of correction and attention immediately. But okay, here we have it. You can read it for yourself. I am disgusted with the lack of accountability for the widespread rape of women and children. And that's what's going on with Epstein. The people the people of this country that voted for Trump, that was part of his promises to release the Epstein list. It was promised from the president and the vice president. And upon getting elected, they do a bait and switch, and they claim that it's a hoax and that there'll be no accountability. It just shows how bad, how let me how inauthentic our politicians are and have become, and especially on these issues. I've received some comments from people that are, let's say, international, that don't understand the connection, or why I would include a domestic issue with this international issue. Again, I'm not a political expert, but one of the few things I've heard often is that all politics in the United States are local and domestic. This is a real issue. These are just suggestions. I don't want to spend too much time promoting myself, doing self-aggrandizement. Um, I think that our country and our world is at a very tenuous, delicate spot, and that everyone on the planet really needs to put some thought into what kind of world we want to build. For those who are interested in knowing more about my background or hearing more about me talking, in that same featured section of my LinkedIn profile, there's an interview I did about 3 months ago. It's an hour interview, and I'm very comfortable and satisfied with that. And I can direct you to that. And it goes into some of my background and some of my other activities, which were included in the email that Solomon sent out. So I've actually been talking for about 20 minutes, and I'd like to open it up to some questions and answers. I'll turn it back to Salman.
Awesome. Thank you. So I have so many questions. One, like again, when you're taking action, that's amazing, right? Like, and 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 so many people are taking so many different types of actions. You're doing something new and unique, and kudos for you for doing that. Uh, and like when we have to choose between taking action A, B, C, D, like the answer, in my humble opinion, is all of the above. And so people who are taking direct action to stop shipments, they're doing important work. People doing protests, they're doing important work. And the action you're going to do, that's important work. And all of those need to be done. So my first few questions relate around what was the process like for starting your run for Congress? Like, what kind of forms did you have to fill out? What kind of fees did you have to pay? How do you get on the ballot? Some maybe like a summary of some of those kind of technicalities. Maybe it's not, maybe it's difficult, maybe it's not. Like, eh, yeah, yeah, yes, please.
So I actually fell into it. Um, Again, I can trace back to 2011 when I got out of the military industrial complex and I began it's now been 14 years of humanitarian activism. And the focus has been different based on where I thought I can contribute the most. What I can say is I'm going to share another link from LinkedIn. It's a very good question as to give a little bit of background as to how I fell into running for Congress. It wasn't a long-term plan. So here I'll go and I'll share, and I'll actually let's see. I'll try to remember to put this link into the chat. So this is a posting I made 6 months ago, soon after I established it, and I showed this is my mugshot because I spent 2 nights in jail for civil disobedience and damage to property and things like that. And I was just so frustrated that I didn't know what to do, and I kind of got ahead of myself and got over my skis. But after that, and this is an actual email. This is part of an email, and I'll take the screen sharing off now. And let's see. Hopefully the screen sharing is off. I actually have the email here. And what I did is I started out by writing to my local FBI office of Eastern North Carolina. And I'll read it for you. I said, U.S. complicity in war crimes and genocide. And I set out in a very short and compact manner what was wrong and what I understood the FBI was to do, in this kind of situation. But also I understood that letter writing doesn't always work. In my case, it very rarely works. So I had the full intention is after I sent the FBI my correspondence asking them to take action or to look into the matter or give me a response, and knowing that they probably wouldn't respond, I then sent it to all the responsible individuals in my state. I'm talking about the governor, the attorney general, other people in this caliber. And then also send it to the representatives, the county representatives, and the city councilman, and the mayor, and the district attorney, and the police chief, and the sheriff, and anyone else I could come up with. And with each leg of this email trail, I wouldn't get any answers, but it was easy to see who had been notified and the fact that they had not responded. So I actually did that almost a year ago in October of 2024. And in that process, it was an education for the local people who normally in Cape Love, North Carolina, they're not dealing with international issues. They're not dealing with weapons transfers. They don't know the laws. They don't know even where to start looking. So based on my experience and my background, I simplified it for them and then sent it forward. And this was maybe 2 years after I had already been arrested for civil disobedience. And that civil disobedience in 2022 was really tracing back to last decade in the war crimes that had been committed in Yemen. Very similar circumstances, not exactly the same, but targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure using US weapons. And it hadn't been resolved. So I continued working on it and being active and protesting. And it just got to a point where I said, I'm going to announce a run for Congress. And that's what I did. All the details about, letter writing or setting up all the approval process, I kind of knew that Ted McIntire, probably wouldn't get elected in 2026. So I said, I will consider myself a write-in candidate. In some states, you need to file in order for a name that is written in to be counted. But to my understanding, even if an individual hasn't filed, voters can still write in a name and so forth. In addition, my understanding is that a lot of the paperwork that's required for running for public office for big candidates that have a decent shot at it, it's to assure, let's say, the legality, the transparency, the integrity of the process, and also to report funding. So that's why I simplified everything and said, I don't want any donations. I'm not soliciting donations, and I'm not going to accept donations because I don't want to be tied to whatever kind of explicit or implicit request that the donor might have today, a month, a year, a decade from now. Nobody owns me. I don't know anybody. I'm not in anybody's debt, and I don't want to be. And so it's a different way of approaching things, a different way of raising your voice. Even though I don't anticipate that I would make it to Washington as an elected official, others might. And those who are at that level, they'll have helpers and they'll have people that'll have to figure that out locally where you are, where the laws apply. I think that the only thing that might happen in my case is if I were to find a very high profile, very well known military, let's say retired military officer that already has an exceptional national profile, and I were to say, hey, let me step out of this election and make room for this other individual. And whether that will come to pass or not, we'll have to see. But that higher profile individual would definitely have to do all that kind of paperwork and activity in order to be a viable candidate. And I would be just one of the many envelope stuffers or go fors and helping them out. I don't consider myself to be any better, any more special, any of any higher priority than anyone else in my community, anyone else on this call, anyone else who might get to see this video. And that's a big difference between the way things are now and the way they ought to be. Clear impression, more than an impression from me, is that the people in Washington, the people in our nation's capitals, they forgot that they work for us. They work for us. And their intransigence and their elite attitudes is just such a turnoff to so many people. We need down-to-earth people, and I guess that's the best that I can do to sum up your question at this point.
Thank you. That's excellent. And again, the hope is that we encourage others to do the same in the US and in other countries. Somebody did have their hand up, and then I had my hand up before, but I forgot who had the next question.
That was me, Simon. I had the same question you had, so that's why I lowered my hand.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Any feedback, Jeff, as far as my explanation or your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess, okay, I'm here in Colorado, so obviously you spent some time at the academy, so hopefully you get back here sometime in the spring. So I'm in the Boulder area. But I guess
I'm a 1984 graduate of the United States Air Force Academy.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a beautiful area, and I have a friend that was a cadet there himself. So my question is, again, along the same lines as Simon's question, but let's say hypothetically tomorrow, I live in the second district of Colorado, like I said, the Boulder area. Let's say tomorrow I want to do a run for Congress. What form specifically would I need to fill out?
Well, I think I'm correct that Donald Trump announced he's running for president a couple of times before he officially ran for president, at least once. And I don't know if others on this chat remember that. So, you're allowed to take these trial runs, and that, I announced my intention to run for Congress. You can announce your intention to run for Congress. And if you get to the point where you're getting enough momentum and you get to the point where you have to fill out paperwork, and I'm pretty sure if you ever accept one dime from one person in your campaign, you got to start filling out your paperwork. But you can do it just as I've done it, which is go to DuckDuckGo or go to Google if you trust them, and figure out what it is. I think the most likely scenario, let's say for a lot of people, is they'll announce a run, and if they get enough momentum, there'll be groups. Ideally, maybe the local Democrats will interview you and find out what your issue is, and either want to incorporate your issue into their campaign or draft the gal or the guy or whoever it is that's announced and say, hey, would you like to be our candidate? And then that's going to have to be an individual decision based on the parties that are involved. So this is definitely, light initial steps. There are other people in this call and elsewhere who have been involved in political campaigns. I have not. But I know I've looked up to run for Congress in the United States. The age limit is 25 years old. Rather than vote for a 60-year-old guy, vote for two people that are in their 30s. They know the future. Look who's had some of the greatest success in the protests and the activism, right? Masks off Maersk and what's happening in the Mediterranean with the dock workers. That is a direct result of the Palestinian youth movement. These are the people that are still in college or were in college a few years ago. If you're 25, you're eligible to run for Congress, and I would highly encourage you to do so.
Okay. Thanks. That clarifies things for me. Appreciate it.
And since there's no other questions, like, Ted, when a person who has served their country, like yourself, like Anthony Aguilar, when they speak, people tend to listen more than the other average person on the street, right? And so um, that is an asset for you personally, right? And then right now in America, as a white man, you that is also an asset for you personally, right? Um, and like, if you were to kind of make your campaign more serious, right? And maybe have a team, slowly build a team to work on your campaign, even with the understanding that you may not win, to make a bigger dent in your local area, that might be worthwhile doing, right? Like, so you did kind of mention that you're lacking charisma. I don't think you're lacking charisma. You have the assets, you have the service, uh, decades of service to your country behind you, and you're well spoken, you're clear in your message, you're knowledgeable in your message, you speak with conviction. So I think you have many things going for you, most of them being on your own merit, and some of them, that just you're born with them, right? So yeah, so I would
It's
highly encourage you to use
it's
those assets
it's
and
yeah, it's a very good comment. I can give you some insight
yeah,
that all the things that you listed were absolutely, unequivocally of great help as I, through this process over the last year, you know, sending out the letter, and I have put the link into the chat.
mm,
Um, that it helped educate the authorities, the police department, the sheriff department, the district attorney, the members of the city council, maybe to a lesser extent, the county, and so forth. But I also can note that being the founder and administrator of Worldwide Humanitarian Solidarity, which now has 6,000 members, I have the ability to look and do some analytics on. I could do it live for you here, but it might be a little clunky. But I can tell you, back in July when I had about 4,000 or 5,000 followers, I looked and said, how many followers do I have in the entire state of North Carolina? Not just my congressional district, but the entire state. And the number was 12. So we'll say it's 12 out of 5,000. Okay. And then I said, okay, North Carolina has about 10, 11 million people. Let's find a country on the other side of the world that has about the same. So I found Tunisia has about 11 or 12 million people. And hopefully my recollection and my numbers are correct. In Tunisia, I had 120 people in my network, in my group. So
right,
my voice resonates in some circles and with some people and not others.
right,
If I can claim, uh, blessings for having the luck to start this group, and it really was something that I fell into. That it's a whole nother story, but it wasn't like, oh, I need to start a group and this is what will happen. Absolutely not. It was what would happen if I did this, and how good could it be, and how much trouble could it bring into my life. And so I started, and it exceeded my expectation. It's also helped me again to get to another level and to learn some things that I would not otherwise have understood properly. And so many of the things that you're talking about are absolutely on point. However, unfortunately, most white Americans that were, of European heritage, that were born into, let's say, the middle class, they are not motivated to do anything different, to make any changes, because I don't know. I don't know why it's only less than 5% of the population that's that's active in the United States. And I'm being generous when I say 5%. I've heard some people say it's 2% or it's a 0.5%.
Right.
But I am very much of that orientation, very much a humanitarian, very much an activist, and it's driven by compassion. And I think that that's the key for when we're interacting with our neighbors near and far, whether they're physical neighbors or virtual neighbors, is to, tap into the empathy and the compassion that we all want. We all want for a new world a transparency, we want integrity, and we want compassion. Right. And that in itself could be a campaign flyer. Vote for Jimmy or vote for Jane. Integrity, compassion, transparency.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I'll just share one thought quickly, and then we'll take a question from Rabia. Since Trump got elected, there have been several elections around the world, including Canada and Australia, which before Trump were pretty much guaranteed to go to right-wing parties in Canada, Australia, and several other countries. And they were polling ahead of other parties by double digits. It's almost like exactly the same story happened in Canada and Australia, and then similar stories in several other countries. There has been a Trump effect. They see Trump and they're like, "Oh shit, we don't want this in our country," right? And hopefully that Trump effect will translate to America itself. And I think we're starting to see that with Mamdani, and then a whole bunch of mini Mamdanis have also propped up. And so, things might be very different in the next midterm and in the next election. Question from Rabia.
Hi, Ted. How are you?
Hi, Rabia.
So in regards to kind of having more traction in countries that recognize themselves in what is happening in Gaza, and you mentioned Tunisia, and I'm aware of the fact that that's because kind of like, they have same name, they look similar, they kind of they identify with kind of Gazans. So that's kind of, I would think, kind of an audience that is easily kind of to engage. So kind of, what are you kind of doing in regards to kind of America to get that traction, knowing, as you said, most of them kind of it's, kind of white Americans are from European descent. Are there any things you can do to kind of create kind of further like a broader kind of traction among kind of regular Americans, if you like?
Well, that's a great question. I think I can give a little bit of background. I believe the reason why I had so much success setting up the LinkedIn public group was there was so much anguish that was being expressed on many social media platforms, and I discovered it on LinkedIn. And I was able to start a group and with a voice saying, I'm an American and I hear what you're saying, and I recognize the accuracy of what you're saying. I am retired military. I hear what you're saying. And in addition to what you're saying, I can add these additional bits of information. On top of that, I have 2 decades experience in foreign military sale. That's the transfer of weapons to allied and friendly countries, so that these countries can use the weapons for their self-defense. And I could further say, and this is an issue that you may not have been aware of, and this is a group that is, this is the nexus of the problem, and here is what they're doing wrong and how to solve it. So I think just the fact that there was a person of my profile that was willing to acknowledge honestly and inform is the reason that the group grew so well for so many months. Now, locally, what I do, whether I'm in the Carolinas, where I have a residence, or I'm in the northern New England, where I also have a residence, is I let people know what I'm doing, but most people aren't interested. But I open up the opportunity for them to speak. So when I came to where I currently am in northern New Hampshire, I told the people, I'm running for Congress, and I showed them some of the flyers. And they said, we don't want to hear about that. That's enough. And that was, 5 minutes of discussion. So I respected that. And if they don't want to talk about it, who can you talk to? Like literally nobody wants to talk about it. But on occasion, I would wear a T-shirt. I got this one from when I protested with Jewish Voices for Peace. I will wear this to a local cafe or eatery. And I've been told by, let's say, some people that are international in Europe, oh, in Spain, everyone's wearing T-shirts with Palestinian flags. In this country, everyone is, there's signs everywhere. Here, it just doesn't exist. So I'm, let's say, the very first to have worn a shirt like that to a couple of different eating establishments. There are fewer American flags flying in front of houses than what I used to see 10 years ago. I'm military. I understand that an upside down flag is a sign of distress. So I have nailed an upside down flag to the side of my barn in New Hampshire. Now, only 20 or 30 people drive the dirt road in front of my house each day to see it, but I'm sure the message is understood. And on that flag, I have written United States of War Crimes and Genocide. So it's very clear what I'm talking about. And what I'm doing is opening up the possibility for others to recognize that you can talk about this and you can address it, even if people, let's say you can use your First Amendment rights, even if people don't want to have a conversation. I think, I don't have the right answer. I wish people would be willing to speak about it, but until they are, I talk about things like compassion. I'll talk to a barista and say, I'm surprised there's not more activism here. Where's the compassion? And it's understood what I'm talking about. We all want to be compassionate people. We all want to show compassion. And so I don't have to, let's say, I like to be very direct. I'm a very direct person. That turns a lot of people off. So in the current environment, I found that the only thing that works is to be indirect, to show up and be there ready and willing to speak, but respect if other people aren't ready. And, you know, they know I'm not happy. They know I'm sad. They know I'm a member of the community. They know I'm a decent person. So I think it just has a slow percolating effect. Everyone, including myself, is subject to the same brainwashing and propaganda from birth. And we're all just slowly uncovering, you know, and waking up to those facts. I hope that that answer was comprehensive and got to your point. When there are activities, for instance, I heard about the People's Conference for Palestine held in Detroit about 3 days before it happened. I read about it in one of the online periodicals that I reference daily. I immediately bought a ticket. I immediately rented a car. I immediately made copies of the flyers in case people wanted to see them. Now, the environment there was not an environment for me to say, hey, I'm Ted and I'm running for Congress and everybody pay attention to me. No, I wasn't registered. I wasn't a speaker. I just went and observed and supported all the other activities that I saw, that I felt in my heart that I could support. And in a very few cases, I shared what I was doing with people to get some feedback. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it does. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, like Mamdani is a great template to follow. And I mentioned earlier that you are now seeing a whole bunch of little Mamdanis pop up, which is amazing, right? Somebody's trying to unseat Nancy Pelosi's seat and a whole bunch of other ones all over the US. And they are building on the momentum that he has successfully created, right? And so there's many really good lessons to follow there. And uh, and you know, one big lesson is focusing on local issues while also being very value and principle driven, right? Uh, I believe in principles of universal justice, peace, and equality, right? That's what he says. Um, in many different ways over and over again. And so and he stays consistent, right? While again focusing primarily on local issues, and he's taking away the Trump voters, the Biden voters, and they're part of his camp now, right? So that could be that compassion piece that you keep mentioning, right? That's coming from your heart. I can see that. I can feel that, right? And that could be driving the local issues as well as, you know, global issues. Yeah. Karina and then Rabia again, please. Karina, please.
Thanks. Hey, Ted.
hi, Karina.
I love what you're doing. I can't imagine actually trying to run for Congress, knowing what it takes to be involved in a campaign, because I'm supporting Karishma, as you know, from last week. But what I am going to be doing is holding a community chat in person to try to make Gaza and foreign policy a voting issue, which I think is kind of in line of what you're trying to do. And I'm trying to create an outline around how to make that a compelling argument, but to also understand why Gaza and foreign policy is not a voting issue, as was highlighted in the last presidential election. And in particular, in my community, you know, nobody came out to protest Gaza. I mean, they just haven't, except for one person. But they all came out in force when Trump came into office. So to me, that just underscores like that people do not understand how important this is to our own lives. So anyway, I love what you're doing, and I might want to connect with you offline because I need to brainstorm with somebody to help me with my own community gathering, community chat around this very issue, because it has to be a voting issue in the next election. So thank you.
Yes, I would say what you're doing, and I know you're supporting someone who's in New Hampshire running for Senate, and that's exactly what you should do, because the little that I know from you, because most of our interaction is virtual, your support to that senatorial candidate is fantastic. It's awesome. And so when I set up this meeting, when I contacted Salman, I never wanted to say, hey, let's have a meeting and I'll tell everybody what I'm doing and everybody locally and around the world can support me. No, I'm saying what I'm doing is an initiative and others can replicate it where they are. And I will support, if I can, I will support you. And so I welcome any and all to contact me via LinkedIn. And if definitely, if anyone else, takes the step and decides to run on this issue, and I'm running on a single issue, which is Gaza, have a post and I will repost it to the group or submit a post on that effort to the group and alert other people that they can do the same. That would be a great outcome for me for what I see as a path forward, which is our executive branch, the presidency, the White House, has been captured by the Zionists. Our judicial branch, the Supreme Court, captured by the Zionists. Our legislative branch, Congress, has been captured by the Zionists. These are my humble opinions, but there's a lot of evidence. So this is an effort to take back one of those captured entities, which is the Congress. And whether, if you're running, if people determine that what I'm doing is appropriate for them, and 1 out of 1,000 runs for Congress on one issue, or Gaza being the primary issue, it kind of drives the other candidates, including those that will get elected, to address the issue, to discuss the issue, and then to be on record for the issue when they're in power and in that position of power, representing the people. Salman, did you say that there was another question from
Rabia, please? Yeah, thank you.
Just going back to what Ted and Salman, you both saying, it's the, kind of sort of the compassion, the caring, and Ted mentioned the kind of sort of the nation have been brainwashed for so many years, decades. And I mean, there are probably kind of two questions to this, is that we see the current wave in the US in particular, but we see it all around the globe, but in the US in particular, because they seem to be this leading force in it, of uber capitalism, of empathy being looked at as something that is dirty. Compassion is not kind of sort of something you want, like Charlie Kirk saying empathy is a thought, it's made up, and we don't do empathy. I just kind of wonder what the percentage of America really has signed up to this way of thinking? And secondly, how do you change that? How do you bring humanity back to a land, a country that is the power, the global power of this world?
Excellent question. I think what humanity is collectively doing internationally is what the United States will eventually get to. I think about your question every day and every night, and I've been thinking about it for years upon years. How do you force this issue? How do you get the United States to alter its trajectory by a little bit or a lot? And for those who have seen my LinkedIn public group and my LinkedIn profile, I've tried hundreds of things, literally hundreds. You know, paint my car with face paint and drive up and down the roads in front of the university. I did that for a month, for 33 days. I lived in my car for 33 days to be in solidarity with the civil disobedience, protesting, handing out flyers in front of the courthouse. So many things. And we have to try everything because we don't know what will work. But when we try things, we need to be cognizant of our environment, where we are. For example, this kind of campaign that I'm running in highlighting murder, war crimes, and genocide of elected officials, that might not be appropriate if you're in the country of Spain, because Spain is maybe on one of the leading edges of the people having been awakened and having awakened their legislature, their leadership. Whereas in another country, and I won't name the country, but they speak German in that country, if you protest, you're going to get punched in the face. So instead of showing up and saying, I'm going to protest and be punched in the face, show up and tell the officers that want to punch you in the face, I'm running for public office. And this is not a protest. This is a campaign event. Are you going to punch me in the face for running for a campaign event? So depending on the environment and the situation, you need to take a different approach. I don't know that I answered your question, but that I have an answer for your question. But what I've learned is you have to meet people where they are. And unfortunately, the people in the United States they're turning their back on the rest of the world. And Mark Twain had a interesting quote. I don't have it exactly, is it? And he lived, a famous writer from over 100 years ago. He wrote, every once in a while, the United States goes to war so that the American public can learn a little bit about geography, what country we're going to war, and then we forget about it. So unfortunately, we're a little bit fat, dumb, and lazy. And it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. The bulk of the American public has slid into this attitude as, I don't care about my civic responsibilities. I'm just going to pay my taxes, and whoever runs and promises to lower my taxes the most, I'll vote for that person. It's their responsibility, and I'm not going to worry about it. Well, we learned that does not work.
I thank you for that, Ted. I agree. But I also think that America has turned against itself very much.
Oh, yes. I have a theory that part of what's going on is that the global financial elite, who owe no allegiance to any country, they can live where they want and they have properties all over the place. they've decided that they were allowing this course of action to proceed because they no longer have a use for Israel. And they've been attacking communities all over the world to rob their wealth. And I think the global financial elite is allowing what's happening to transpire because their next target is to rob and destroy the middle class in the United States of America. They're going to wipe out the middle class and all their debt, and most people will not survive, and they will not have any property at the end of this. I always hope for the best, but I prepare for the worst, and you have to be prepared for all scenarios. And that's one of the scenarios that I'm prepared for.
Thank you.
All right. I thank you so much, Ted. Would you like to close off with any thoughts before we end the meeting?
No, Salman, I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to the group, and also the fact that this can be recorded. Maybe it will be recorded in one full-length hour, and then also we can break it up into an initial recording of maybe 20 minutes, and then another second part of 40 minutes with questions and answers. And maybe that way a short 20-minute video will be viewed by more people out there in the world. And I always welcome feedback. I always welcome new ideas, additional ideas. We have to try everything because nobody knows what's going to work. And I guess I would summarize that I don't intend to wait until November of 2026 when the midterm elections to solve this issue. Is if you're gonna, we need to find solutions today. Every day I wake up hoping, praying that it ends today, because we're losing a classroom worth of children every day in Gaza. Every day in Gaza, a classroom full of children is being murdered. It's inconceivable. So whatever we do, it's get results now. Nonviolent, well thought out, and appropriate for your community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next week, where whoever is able to join. Our friend Manal Fahuri will be speaking. She is one of the people who has been bringing us amazing speakers every week. Anthony Aguilera, Miko Peled, and so many others. She's the one who invited them. The speaker from Code Pink, and Wright, and many of the other prominent speakers were brought by Manal. So she is chair, I forget the exact title, in CARE and on boards of many other NGOs. I'm looking forward to finally hosting herself as a guest speaker. So I'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.